thank you all for coming tonight. Chris and I really appreciate it. This is a topic that I know we all are very interested in, recycling and waste management with Fairfax County. And we're lucky to have Erica Carter, excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of Rachel Carson. Erica
She and I are like this.
who's with us tonight. And she is originally from where'd you say? Sacramento area. And she's here, and she went to George Mason for her Bachelor of Science in Public Administration, and then her master's from UVA in Urban and Environmental Planning. And she also has her LEED certification, which is kind of cool, for that's for leadership in energy and environmental design. So I'm just going to suggest that you all keep your microphones on mute. And if you do have a question as Erica is speaking, go ahead and raise your hand, and then Jennifer's helping us out tonight, and she'll call on you so that you can ask your question to Erica. But not having everybody, off their mics makes it a little difficult sometimes and confusing. So I appreciate that very much. And certainly at the end of the program, we will have a question and answer period too, okay? So with that, I'd like to turn everything over to Erica. And so I'll say, we're gonna start the recording now. Here. Okay, Erica, take it away.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm going to share my screen. I prepared a little PowerPoint slideshow for you. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Very good. All right. So, one of the things that we think about when we talk about throwing something away is, where is away? I mean, it leaves your house magically. Somebody comes and gets it and takes it away, but it ends up somewhere. So we're going to talk a little bit about where it goes. Just to give you an overview of the county system, you probably know Fairfax County has 1.2 million residents, over 400,000 housing units, and we base our solid waste and recycling decisions on this hierarchy that was prepared years ago by the EPA. And, while most of my work is in recycling, what I really want people to do more of is the source reduction and reuse, the first two labels on this inverted pyramid. And then we talk about recycling, and then we talk about resource recovery and incineration, which is probably you all know, but some people don't. We don't have a traditional landfill in Fairfax County. We have incineration, we have waste to energy. So it's kind of like the less bad option when it comes to getting rid of your waste. We do produce energy, and it provides energy for about 80,000 homes in Fairfax County. And then the next level of waste management is landfilling. And so that's the last thing we want to do, but there are things that are just plain old trash and need to be landfilled. So this is kind of an overview of what we've got in Fairfax County. We have trash and recycling and yard waste, and that's known as a 3-bin system. Most of us don't have bins for our yard waste, but it's the third component. So there's trash, what goes to the landfill or incineration in Fairfax County. Recycling, that goes to materials recovery facilities and gets sorted and baled, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then there's yard waste, which gets turned into mulch. But not everything fits into that system. There are other things like glass. We have the Purple Can Club, as they call it, where you can take your glass, and it's not just wine bottles, it's also salad dressing and pickles and kombucha and a bunch of other things. but that doesn't belong in with curbside recycling. It's not compatible. We also have plastic bag recycling at most grocery stores. Also not compatible with curbside recycling, but very recyclable. We have food scraps, which is one of our newer programs. We have 2 sites that are available every day at the transfer, I-66 transfer facility on West Docks and the I-95 landfill complex in Lorton. We also have specialty items like cooking oil. Like if you're one of those people that fries your turkey at Thanksgiving, and then you've got this mass of peanut oil that you need to get rid of, we can take that and it becomes a biofuel. We also have e-waste recycling. So I like to say anything with a cord, but it is a little bit more specific. It's things with monitors and microchips and things like that. We can take all of that and it's still free in Fairfax County, which is quite a deal, because that is kind of an expensive program for a lot of municipalities to organize. And then household hazardous waste. A lot of that does get recycled, but it doesn't belong in your trash. Is kind of the main thing to think about. You don't want to put that into a trash truck and then compact it and mix it all up, and every once in a while there's a boom, so we don't want that kind of thing in with the rest of the trash. And so a little bit more about curbside recycling. A lot of neighborhoods are using these what they call side loaders, so the driver never has to get out of the truck. It's a very efficient way to collect trash and recyclables. It saves on labor costs, and as it turns out during pandemics, it's safer for people. They don't have to be clustered in one truck together. Some of the messaging that we've put out about recycling, we have kind of a yes, no, and always, never. There are things that are always going to be recyclable in Fairfax County, and that's paper, aluminum and steel cans, number 1 and 2 plastics. So if you've got paper, and that includes milk cartons and all the boxes from Amazon that you're getting, and newspaper, if you're still getting that, all of that can go into your blue bin with these other materials, and they will always, always, always be recycled. These don't get burned, they don't get composted, they don't get landfilled, they get recycled. And we have markets for all of these materials. And then, we also have the list of things that are not recyclable in your curbside container. And that's things like clothing and plastic bags and cords, and actually shredded paper that creates quite a litter problem. If you have shredded paper, there are some other alternatives to recycling that you can look into. That includes using it for gardening applications, getting rid of old paint, composting, things like that. So, and then of course, the no plastic bags, huge, huge problem in everywhere across the country, plastic bags getting mixed in with recyclables. And this is where your recycling ends up. This is a materials recovery facility. We call it a MRF. And it's a series of conveyor belt lines that go through this giant warehouse, and different components of the waste stream are picked out. So you've got paper, aluminum, plastics, all of those things, big pieces of cardboard get plucked out, some of it by humans, some of it by magnets or eddy currents or other, what is it called? Robotics, AI, not human, but a lot of it is human. So when you think about putting stuff into your recyclables, there's a human that might be sorting through that. And if there's things like diapers or pet waste or, things that are kind of unsavory, a human's actually going to touch that. And then after all of those things are segregated, they're different materials, you have, use my arrow, like this is, whoops. This is metal, so this is aluminum cans primarily, and it's all the aluminum cans that they collected that day, gets wrapped up, it's called baling in wire, and that gets sold. This is all the cardboard, we call it OCC, old corrugated cardboard, that gets sold. This is PET plastic, this is HDPE plastic, and the last one is mixed paper. So it's probably a combination of newspaper, magazines, junk mail, things like that. So that's all a MRF does. When your recycling gets collected and taken away, it just goes to get separated and baled. It doesn't get turned into a new product until later in the process. And this is a look at what we have collected in 2021. This is hot off the press. Shows you all the different things that are in the recycling that we collect in Fairfax County. And this is not just residential, this is also commercial and not industrial, institutional. You can see things like food waste are starting to become a bigger portion of what we recycle. Yard waste has always been a big chunk of what we collect in this area. We're a very, green area. Single stream, that refers to all of that stuff that goes into your blue bin. So it's, aluminum cans, metal cans. But then we further break it down from the industrial sources of paper, metal, things like waste wood and used oil filters. Textiles are a very small percentage of what we collect, and that's not collected curbside, that's collected in the county writ large, but not specifically curbside. And I mentioned that we collect the used cooking oil, that's a fog, fats, oil, and grease. Electronics, still a very small portion of what we collect, but it is in there. So like I said, if you can manage your yard waste successfully, you've really gone above and beyond in helping us to manage our waste stream in Fairfax County. And I always show this cartoon because if you had 3 other recycling coordinators in the room with me, we'd have some disagreements about what is and isn't recyclable. I tend to rely primarily on the people who are selling the recyclables to know what is and isn't really recyclable, but there's really a market for and what we can really get rid of. So it's a moving target, is what I will say. But these are the things that you can count on, like I mentioned before. These are the always items. You can always count on putting this in your recycle bin if it's clean, empty, and dry, and it will end up being recycled without a doubt. People want those materials. There's also special materials that are recycled in other places, and we talked about that briefly. This time of year, we're getting a lot of, people are doing a lot of planting, and you get those black plastic, those are HDPE generally containers, and those can go back to most nurseries or big box stores like Home Depot. They will collect those and they get recycled. They basically get turned back into the same thing or reused, depending on the company. But things like film plastic can always go back to a grocery store that gets turned into plastic lumber from companies like Trex out in Winchester. Things like hangers from the dry cleaner, those can go back to the dry cleaner. In fact, recently with the issues in supply chains, there were dry cleaners that were begging to get those hangers back because they were paying a fortune for them and they weren't having them delivered in a timely manner. So and nobody wants to really keep a wire hanger anyway, right? So taking those back to the dry cleaners is a really good solution for that. We also accept oyster shells down at our I-95 landfill complex, and electronics we talked about. Light bulbs, especially the CFL bulbs, contain mercury. You don't want to put those in your trash. They definitely don't go in your recycling, but you can take them to the transfer station or the landfill complex and we will accept them. And batteries, you know, there's alkaline batteries, those go in the trash, but all of those other batteries are generally recyclable and contain rare earth minerals and metals, I mean, and we definitely want to keep those out of the waste stream. And I just wanted to mention that, you know, recycling is a big business. When people worry about things not really getting recycled, there's been a lot of money pumped into the recycling system, both, you know, domestically and abroad. When we stopped sending our recyclables to China, a lot of Chinese businesses invested in manufacturing in the United States, where they could take things, especially like plastics, HDPE and PET, and make them into new products. And these are just some of the products that they are turned into. Especially things like carpeting is made out of PET, it's old soda bottles, fleece. A lot of the fleece that we wear is made out of old soda bottles. And then plastic piping and things like that are made out of HDPE. And there's a big market for that. And there are also requirements in a lot of either manufacturing groups or in legislation that requires a certain percentage of recycled content in different materials. And primarily that happens through purchasing agreements or purchasing requirements where they say, okay, well, you know, here's one of our specifications for this product. We want it to be made with this amount of post-consumer recycled content. And so that helps to spur demand for recycling. And then, you know, like I mentioned before, we just discovered that curbside recycling is not the best place to put glass. It really is a contaminant. Glass goes through a very difficult journey from your house to the recycling facility. It gets crushed and bumped and jangled many times along the way. And so by the time that it got to the materials recovery facility and onto those conveyor belts, it was just bits and pieces and it got mixed in with everything else. And it really was not recoverable in the way we want. So we said, you know what, we're going to pull it out and we invested in a piece of equipment to crush the glass. As it turns out, what we had originally thought was the best we can do is use this in construction applications. So when you lay pipe, you usually lay some gravel, and that would be quarried stone, which, you know, has environmental impacts in just doing that action. So we said, you know what, we'll crush the stone ourselves and we'll use it in our construction projects. And we did that at first, but then we had such a high quality product. And one of the reasons is you can see we have outfitted these containers in a way that makes it a little bit difficult to use. So you can only put one bottle in at a time. And when you have to do that, you get a much cleaner product at the end. So we have been getting requests from all over, from everything from new bottle manufacturers, which is what we consider the highest and best use, bottle to bottle, but also companies that are doing other things like fiberglass. They want our stuff. So it went from being something that we had to pay to get rid of to something that is now very desirable, and we are getting paid by manufacturers for it. So this program has taken off throughout the region. You can see we've got containers. They're not Fairfax County containers. They're our partners down in Fredericksburg and out in Loudoun County. It's just really taken off, and it's a really great story of how just sort of reworking something. You have your basic assumptions, but sometimes you can, look at a problem in a different way and get a better solution than what you had. So this has been a huge success. I wouldn't say it's a great money maker, but it's definitely not, it pays for itself, which is, in government, that's one of the best things you can hope for, right? That it pays for itself. We've also taken steps to manage yard waste better. For a long time, we accepted yard waste in plastic bags. And what ended up happening was that plastic, in the process of taking it from your house to the composting facility, that plastic would get shredded, and it would get mixed in with the yard waste. It would get loose and flow away, and it was becoming a source of plastic pollution, and specifically microplastic pollution, where it gets into our waterways and you can't see it, but it becomes a real problem. So we took the plunge and said, we're banning plastic bags. You can use a reusable container like the ones here on the right side. You can bundle it. You can put it in one of these paper bags that are specifically designed for yard waste and hold up well. You can also mulch it on your property and use it as a nutrient for your own lawns and gardens, or you can try backyard composting. So those are all different ways that you could manage yard waste. And I haven't heard too much. I think before we did this, people were really concerned that getting rid of plastic bags was going to be a real hardship on the community. And we have not seen that to be the case. And then there's food waste. And EPA has come up with this hierarchy. And the first thing you want to do is to try to reduce the amount of food that you waste. Especially, well, when you're talking about meat and things like that, that's the kind of thing you really don't want to waste, I don't think. So, planning ahead, throwing stuff in the freezer if you don't think you're going to get to it soon. There's also options, especially if you're getting catering or something, to take leftovers to feed hungry people, taking things that you ended up not wanting to a food bank. Also feeding animals. Giant Foods in our area takes their food scraps and it's turned into animal feed. There are also industrial uses like biodigestion that turns it into ethanol gas. Composting is also a great solution, whether it's at your house or if you use one of our sites throughout the county to compost food scraps. And then the last thing you want to do, the least preferred method, would be incineration or landfill. So we have a couple different options now, and this just started a couple of years ago. We have 2 permanent sites at our I-66 transfer station and the I-95 landfill complex. Those are open every day from 7 to 4. And you can take all your food scraps there and dump them out and take your empty containers home. Or my pet project is the farmers market food scrap composting, where at selected farmers markets in the county, we just didn't have the resources to do it at all the farmers markets. You can bring food scraps, drop them off, do your shopping, and come back the next week with whatever peels and scraps you have left over. We also accept things like flowers. So if you got flowers at the market, things like that. Basically, I like to use this graphic of the cheeseburger, and it might even be a bacon cheeseburger for all we know. And everything in that bacon cheeseburger can be composted in our system. You wouldn't do that in your backyard, but in our system, we can accept meat and dairy, bones, bread products, all of that can be composted, and it's been really successful. Last year, we diverted 22 tons of food scraps from disposal, and that was the equivalent of taking about 50 cars off the road. So for a short season and just 4 farmers markets, it really showed the impact that we can have with these small programs. And I shouldn't have saved this for last, but really what we want to do is you know, first of all, refuse. If you're getting carry out, you probably, if you're going to eat it at home, you probably don't need utensils. You know, most adults don't need a straw to drink. I mean, you know, there's these things that we take for granted. Having a party and having lots of bottles of water for people, you know, is that really the best way to do it? Or could you have glasses and a pitcher of water and people could drink that way? It's just, you know, making some choices about how you want to manage what you buy and what you serve. One of the things that I do that some people still think is a little strange is I bring my own container for leftovers. I find restaurant portions to be, you know, usually pretty big. And so what I'll do is I'll bring a container that I know I can seal up and it's not going to ooze all over the place. You know, some of those to-go containers are messy. So I like to have my own. I throw it in my bag and I've got it when I'm ready to use it. A lot of places are having refilling stations for water. That's what this is right here, where you can bring your own bottle and fill it up with water. You know, there's a lot of places to donate goods that you don't want used. A lot of used textiles, a lot of used clothing. If it doesn't get reused as clothing, it can often be broken down into rags and textiles. So that's a better solution in the end. And then my son, who's 20-something, just discovered Habitat Restores, and he's buying furniture there all the time now. So there's a lot of good places to get rid of the furniture that you no longer want, but someone who's starting out can really make good use of that. So those are all just a few, actually, of the reuse and source reduction opportunities. And like I said, the first thing that you can do is always just refuse and you know, be a little proactive about what you're buying, how you're consuming things, where you're getting things from, and kind of beginning with the end in mind, thinking about where you want to end up. So that is my presentation for you. And here's my contact information. And I am more than happy to answer questions. I know you guys had specifically a lot of questions about plastics recycling. So happy to talk about that or anything else that you want to bring up.
Okay, Erica, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This has been very interesting. The floor is now open for questions and discussion. We have about 14 people on the committee on the call. Questions for Erica?
Yes, hi, this is John Oldfelder. I have a question.
Yes.
I sent Erica a copy of an article, a recent article from the Atlantic Monthly about plastic recycling. And I find the plastic recycling a little bit confusing. And, you know, my tendency, we get a lot of plastic things that flow in and out of the house, not just water bottles and things like that, but, you know, you get the clamshells with from grocery stores and pardon?
Restaurants.
And restaurants, and you get plastic containers at stores with coleslaw or whatever it is, because that's the way they sell it. And my understanding is a lot of those things are not recyclable. They're not the right type of plastic. Is that correct?
Well, things like the clamshells are a little bit confusing because sometimes they're made of PET and sometimes they're made of polystyrene.
Yeah,
And so it's hard to tell which it is.
exactly.
Yeah, but an optical sorter at a recycling facility can catch the difference between the two types of plastics. But, you know, I would say to the extent that you can avoid purchasing products that way,
I understand.
if you're concerned about the environmental impact of your actions, you probably want to steer away from that. And more places are letting you bring in your own containers and filling those. So
Well, it gets to be a little bit cumbersome, but so I should continue to put the clamshells or whatever in with my plastic recyclables.
mhm.
And as you say, there is a machine that can tell the difference between which ones. Now, the ones that aren't recyclable, they get sent to the Green Dragon for incineration.
Dragon.
Yeah, that's what it's known as, the Green Dragon.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Oh,
I thought everybody knew that. So, okay.
never heard that. We used to call it, now I can't think of what it's called. We used to have a different name for it. You know, the Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah,
Feed Me.
but Green Dragon, with the fire and the incineration and so on. I
Yeah,
think
that makes more sense.
it makes more
That makes
sense.
more sense.
But my question is, so do the items that get pulled out all get sent over for incineration?
Probably not, because most of the processing of recyclables happens in Prince William County, and that stuff goes to their landfill.
So Prince William ends up with our plastics or other things that may not go to the incinerator.
All of our wishful recycling ends up in somebody else's, but we pay to dispose of it.
Yeah, okay.
We take
All
a
right.
hit on that. So that's why we encourage people, when in doubt, throw it out.
Would the county ever be open to taking some of us, if we wanted to go on a group tour to see the separation center and the process that the recyclables go through?
That's not our facility.
No,
There is a
right.
facility.
It's under
in-
contract. I know it's a private facility, but
Yeah, and they do offer tours. American Recycling in Manassas offers tours.
okay, so we could sign up if we wanted to, and then we would be able to see firsthand what goes on and how things are, how the recyclables, once they come in and get dumped in and they're going through the initial sorting process, we would be able to see that.
Yeah, they also have a pretty good video that can show you that. That facility, it's an industrial facility, and as much as I think recycling is a good thing, when you go there and you see how much stuff gets thrown out by people, it's overwhelming, the amount of waste that we produce. And even though that potentially is turned into new products, it's still overwhelming. We could be making better decisions.
So it's like a lot of things where if people get to see what's really going on, it can have an impact on their thinking and their choices.
I know it's had an impact on me and my kids. But like I said, there are good videos out there where you
So it's American Recycling in Manassas?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
That's a great suggestion, John. I'd like to go with you on that tour. Thanks for those questions. Several other people have their hands up. Pam, you've had your hand up for a couple minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you. I have a question. As I recall, several years ago, there was a community pickup, actually in the community, of hazardous waste materials like paint, like other things like that people could take their hazardous waste to and not have to go to the I-66 or the the other transfer, I-95 transfer station.
Mhm.
Question I have you abandoned that, or can communities request that? Or a Drainsville supervisor, in our case, request that they have a day where we can bring that kind of hazardous waste to within the community, to a place within the community.
Yeah, so when we started offering everyday service at the transfer station and the landfill complex, we stopped doing the neighborhood events because that's a lot of transportation of potentially hazardous materials. What we really want to encourage is having things touched once. So if you take it from your house somewhere, take it to where it's going to end up, right? As opposed to taking it to an intermediary and then having it transferred again to another location. So we try to make the drop-offs as convenient as possible. They're open, I think, from 7 to 4 every day, including the weekends. And that way there's less opportunity for things to go wrong if they're only being transported, to one place as opposed to multiple stops along the way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Lisa, you've had your hand up.
Hi, thank you, Erica. It's a great presentation. So I thought it was really interesting where you're talking about the quality of the glass recycling product. I know some countries in Europe moved away from single stream and went back to kind of multi-stream recycling, and
Right.
they found that recycling rates have increased. Are there conversations about that in Fairfax County? What are your thoughts?
About breaking it down further into multiple streams.
Like at the household level, if we
At the-
separated our recycling better, would that improve the outcome?
I think what the most common thing that you're seeing now in the United States is what they call a 3-bin system. So it's trash in one, recyclables in another, and then organics in the third. And the organics would include food waste and yard waste, and potentially like soiled paper, things like that. Breaking down, we've already talked about people want convenience, and having, when I first started out in San Jose, we had 3-bin system, 4-bin system. We had people separating paper and plastic, or no, we didn't even collect plastic back then. Plastic and metal and glass, and the thinking became, people don't want to do all that sorting at their house. They don't want to devote that much space to their waste. What they want is a more simple, more straightforward system. So that's where single stream kind of started. And I don't know, I kind of feel like, we're not Europeans. We're for whatever reason, we don't want to work that hard in terms of sorting out waste. We want to do whatever is convenient and easy, and not have to devote too much time to it. So personally, I would separate all my stuff out, and I try to be a more conscientious shopper, but I don't know that we'll ever get to where we're doing a lot of sorting at home. I think it's surprising really how well the glass recycling project has turned out. I have never been to one of those glass recycling locations, weekend, weekday, any time of day, without somebody showing up there. I mean, and people told me it would never work, that Fairfax County residents would never take their glass and dump it in a separate place. That was just never going to happen. And, we wondered if it would, and I'm telling you, it has been a huge success. And maybe it'll show people what our residents are capable of, that they do care and they're willing to go, make an extra trip over the week or two and take things to different locations.
I want to follow up with that if I can,
Sure.
Erica. I mean, I make the trip to Great Falls Library once a week or every other week, and it's a bit of a chore. And I just wonder, though, how many people actually do that in our community, frankly. And I'm guessing, if I might hazard a guess, that a lot of people just don't, and they put glass in their trash.
It's
What happens to that?
possible. It's possible, but we have a hard time keeping up with the quantity of glass that gets recycled. I mean, we initially had just one container at the Reston South Park and Ride, and it became clear that one container was not going to do the trick there. And we've had to increase frequency of collection and increase the size of the containers. It has been remarkable how many people are willing to do that. And like I said, I've never gone and had the site to myself. There's always traffic there.
Okay, all right. Pam, you've had your hand up, and Winnie has a question too. Go ahead, Pam. Or maybe she's not there. Okay.
Maybe she didn't take her hand down.
Oh, maybe so. Winnie, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I've been to Wegmans and to Mom's, and they have recycling bins out there. And I was wondering, is there a process to get that at different facilities, like for instance, our Safeway here in Great Falls or some local businesses? And is there a process for that? And also, what do these places like Wegmans and Mom's that do have these facilities, how do they process it when they collect the stuff? Or do you know? I mean, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think that's their own corporate sustainability program. You know, that's something that they care about, especially Moms. Moms has been working with a company called TerraCycle for years.
Terra,
TerraCycle.
T-A-R-A?
T-E-R-R-A.
Oh, okay.
TerraCycle. And they accept a lot more products, but you have to pay to have those recycled because they're not the commodities that are in high demand. They can be recycled, but it costs something to recycle those. So Moms accepts a lot of things like water filters and
They take batteries and shoes and eyeglasses and
all kinds of things.
Corks.
Yeah.
Most libraries will accept eyeglasses. Those go to the Optimist Club and they get,
at the
they
library?
get sent.
Oh.
Mhm. Most libraries have that.
Oh,
Yeah.
gosh, has anybody noticed that at the Great Falls Library? Recycling glasses? I'm just wondering, I'm just throwing that out to the group here. Anybody notice that
No.
at the
I have
library?
not.
I haven't
I
noticed it,
never
but
have, I
maybe,
go there. Pardon me, Barbara
I was just
probably
thinking
knows.
maybe a list of all these resources of places to take these items, put that on our website. Because
Yeah.
I know like Target takes
County
car
website?
seats, things like that.
Yeah, it's a great idea, Lisa. We should put it on our website too, at the Great Falls Citizens Association. I know, for example, Apple will take your laptop. You can trade it in. It has valuable metals and also phones. They will take your phones.
Right.
So,
And we refer to that as extended producer responsibility, where the producers of different items will take their products back and either refurbish them or recycle them for the parts. So that's something that's also becoming more popular. They also are doing that in some places with paint, with latex paint. They're taking that back and turning it into either kind of a mixed batch of things or other industrial uses. So we are seeing more producer responsibility happening.
Yeah. Haven't seen much of that. We got our glass thing, that's fabulous, but we'd love to have more. We're in Great
Do you enjoy
Falls.
that crash? The noise?
Oh, luckily they have it in the furthest corner, way in the back at the library. But yes, anytime you go there, it's always a surprise every time.
I just
But-
heard from so many people how much they enjoy that crashing sound.
Well, you feel good you're doing something. And a lot of times they don't even break. I
Well,
hear them shattering in the bin, but then
Yeah.
again, I don't go there that often.
Other questions for Erica? John, you have your hand up again.
Yes, Erica, what do you see as the next big breakthrough coming along in the recycling industry?
In terms of local government, I think food scraps, food waste is a huge part of the waste stream. And it's also kind of the ickiest part of the waste stream. So coming up with a solution that people are going to be willing to participate in and that we can do cleanly is going to go a long way towards reducing waste in the county.
Would the county be willing to work with the GFCA in Great Falls to set up a place for composting food wastes? So I don't have to find the farmer's market, or I don't have to go to I-66 transfer station or wherever with my food waste, but where people could bring their food waste or other compostable materials on a regular basis. For example, when we go to do the trash park, we do the trash park out in Great Falls on Saturday mornings. We also use that as a time, since it's on the way, to stop at the library to dump our glass.
Yeah.
And so it's on the way, it's an easy trip. If we had also in that same area a large compost bin or someplace where people could bring those additional wastes, I think you get a lot more of it out of the residents in Great Falls. Right now, it's cumbersome, difficult, and it's a fur piece for people to have to take them if they're not doing it on their own. So I just throw that out as something, and maybe the committee can think about that. And I have one other point. Maine and a couple of other states are shifting the burden of the cost of the packaging materials back to the manufacturers, and creating a situation where they have to pay in order to based on how much packaged material they're selling in that state or distributing. And the monies are then used to help support the local government recycling efforts. And in Maine and some other states, and I think in parts of Virginia with the smaller jurisdictions, the cost of recycling is a real barrier to those jurisdictions. Fairfax County is large, it's wealthy, we do a lot, but there's a lot of jurisdictions that just can't afford to do some of the things that we do. And a program like the one I'm talking about that Maine has enacted would go a ways towards providing funds for improved recycling across the state. And
absolutely. I touched on that briefly, the extended producer responsibility legislation. I think it just got signed into law in Colorado just a couple days ago. And, it's a different way of thinking about waste, right? We put all the burden on the consumer or the local government to get rid of this waste.
Right.
Really take it back a step. It starts with the producer and how are they designing their packaging for recycling or reuse or disposal? And is their packaging excessive? Is their packaging, really, really necessary? I was just telling somebody at work today, I love the sous vide eggs at Starbucks, and they had something like that at Wegmans, or not Wegmans, at Costco. And I was like, oh yay, I'm gonna get these and make them at home or make it at work. And I opened the package and there was so much packaging in there that I said, I will never buy this again.
Mhm.
I mean, the product was fine, it tasted good, but there was so much packaging involved that I had to deal with. But I said, I will never buy this again. And that's one way that we influence the way packaging is designed. I've been at conferences where manufacturers have said, you know, we did this way, and then we got a lot of mail, a lot of feedback from our customers that said, you know, this is too much or this is not enough, and so we changed it. So I think that we forget the power that we have in, you know, creating that feedback loop and telling manufacturers, telling suppliers that, you know, this is over the top. We don't need this kind of packaging. And I just think a lot of it falls back on us to decide what we're willing to accept and not accept. But you're right, absolutely right. Extended producer responsibility is definitely the wave of the future. And whether Virginia is able to go down that path, it's hard to say. But it's definitely, I think, where some more progressive states are going.
I plan on contacting my delegate and my senator
Yeah.
with information about the law in Maine and now Colorado. And my understanding is that with the impact of the producer responsibility laws is that the producers, because of the extra cost, have on their own started to relook, with regardless of how many letters they get, to look at what their packaging is, what their real needs are, what their costs are, and what the materials are that they're using in their packaging. And so it can have an impact. And I will talk to them about that and see if there's anybody who's prepared to support such legislation. And I would hope that the county, when it weighs in every year on the legislative program, would also support such an effort.
I think they would.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Oh, Julie,
Excellent point, John. Thank you.
turn your microphone.
Yeah, right. Yes, I have a quick question here. I know you spoke about it, but I didn't quite hear the answer. Cooking oil, what does one do with cooking oil, and what should one put the cooking oil in? For example, the container.
Well, you can put it back into the original container if you can, you know, using a funnel or something. I've used old pasta jars to put it in.
Plastic. Did you say
yeah,
plastic?
pasta sauce jars? And it's any kind of cooking oil, corn oil, peanut oil, olive, all of those can go back.
Okay, into the trash.
No, I mean, if you wanted to get them recycled and turned into a biofuel, you would take those to the I-66 transfer station or the I-95 landfill complex, and it's over by where they have the household hazardous waste.
I see. Well, that again would be very handy to have something nearby for that kind of thing, because it's a bit of a trek way over there, I-66. So if we get something more local, I think for us that would be very convenient. I mean, I think we'd be happy to do it. It's just that you don't have half an hour there and half an hour back or even longer, you know, for a bit of cooking oil. So John, perhaps that's something that you could bring to their attention as well. I think Winnie mentioned something about, you know, locally, either in stores or somewhere that we can make recyclables. Also, so thank you, yes. But if we don't want to go to I-66 or we don't have the time or whatever, what should one do about it? The cooking oil?
Well, definitely don't put it down the drain.
No, right. Exactly.
Really, don't do that. That's bad.
Right.
So put it in some kind of container and put it in your trash.
Okay, fine, good. Okay, and I'm so glad, I just have to make this comment. I'm so glad you made the comment, you spoke to packaging, because I could not understand when, for example, you order something online, it comes in FedEx or UPS, and there's this huge big box with lots of packaging inside. And you think, oh my gosh, what could that be? I don't think I ordered something so large. But you open it and, you know, this enormous box, lots of packaging, and finally you get down to this itty bitty thing that actually you ordered, and you can't understand why they do this. I never could. So why? Why is
Well, I
it?
wonder if there's a feedback loop there too. I wouldn't, and I don't know this for a fact, but I would guess that you could when you go back to talk about how satisfied you were with that order on Amazon specifically, you can say, what's with all the packaging? You know, I mean, there are different ways, because if it's insufficient packaging, you can also let them know that I received this, it was broken, there wasn't enough packaging. Or you can say, I received this and, you know, this was a ridiculous amount of packaging. I think you can do that. And that's, you know, that's the kind of information that they need. I think we sort of take it for granted that they aren't listening to us, but there are all kinds of ways that they slice and dice their feedback. And I think it's up to us on some level to let them know that what they're doing is not acceptable. But I do want to make the point that those air pillows in the plastic, those can go back with your plastic bags to the grocery store.
Ah, okay.
So those
good,
are very
good.
recyclable, and they will get turned into plastic lumber by Trex. So there is a
What
way.
about the peanuts?
Hmm?
What about the peanut ones?
I don't see so many of the peanuts
As much
anymore.
anymore?
I know some of those are biodegradable. Last ones that I got, you could eat it if you wanted to. I don't recommend that.
I've never seen.
They're made out of cornstarch or something, and you can just hose them down and they'll dissolve. But if you got styrofoam peanuts, those can usually go back to the shipping place, the UPS store. That they'll take those back. You can also use them at home for plant pots and things like that. So there's ways to reuse those, but I don't remember the last time I got a package with packaging peanuts in it. It's been a
I
while.
have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they'll tell you whether they're styrofoam or
Biodegradable.
biodegradable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else? No.
I have another
Oh,
question.
Oh,
How
good.
do you
Go ahead, Lisa.
recycle plastic bags that have the Ziploc? Or do those go with your grocery bags as well? Or
Those go with grocery bags.
okay,
So with grocery bags, you can put like the shrink wrap that if you've got a case of water, you know how it's plastic, the cardboard bottom, and then it's got the shrink wrap over the top. Or if you buy toilet paper at Costco, that's that bundling plastic. That can all go back to the grocery store. The plastic that goes over your dry cleaning can go back. And bubble wrap also can go back to the grocery store. So there's a lot more than just, plastic bags that had food in them.
I think the plastic bags from FedEx and people like that, the shipping bags that they use can go in with those bags as well.
Exactly.
Excellent.
That.
Great point. Great question.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Lisa. We're just about out of time, I think, aren't we, Winnie? It's 8
Yeah.
o'clock. It's after 8. Anybody else? Final questions? Okay.
Well, I would like to thank, anybody else? No? Okay. Erica, we really want to thank you. We're probably going to have you back again.
I would be happy
Really-
to. You're
really
a lovely
great.
group to speak with.
Very great presentation, and we're glad we have your presentation because we will put it on our website. And that's all I have to say. If anybody else has a comment, or if we don't, we can probably end our meeting for tonight. And thank you all again so much for attending. It's a beautiful evening and you are here for recycling. Maybe we can make a difference in Great Falls and try to get something happening, but I'm definitely going to talk to the library about at least having something out there for the Optimist Club for recycling glasses. I mean, golly.
I'll bet they do. It's a small box,
Oh, okay. Maybe they do. I haven't seen it,
right?
but
Yeah,
I'm going to go look.
right? There's your assignment for tomorrow.
I'll have to wear my glasses to see.
Winnie, that's the small box is usually in the hall opposite the bathrooms on the floor. That's where I've seen it.
Oh, thank you,
It's very,
Pam.
it looks like a shoebox.
Okay, no wonder I haven't seen it. Okay, well, thank you very much. All right. Well, listen, Lisa, thanks again. And it's great to see you all. I do want to say that we will not have a meeting in July and August. So you can play on Monday evenings.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you so much. Thank you,
All
Winnie.
right. Thank you all,
Erica.
everybody, and
Thanks.
Lisa. Thanks a lot.
Night.
Night,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye,
Good night.
everybody.